welcome to the Turtle Tracks podcast. This is your host, Brian VanHooker, and I'm here with Cameron Chittock and Fero, the creative duo behind Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Stranger Things, the miniseries from last year, right? Was it last year? Okay, it came out in 2023,
Yeah.
but now it's a collected book. So as part of the, I don't know, we'll call it the Turtle Tracks buying guide or whatever. But if you're looking for a good Christmas gift, the collected book, which is all I have, it's fantastic. Guys, thank you for being here. I appreciate it.
Thank you, man. Glad to be here.
Yeah, thank you so much for having us.
I was just saying this before we started rolling, but I'll reiterate it now. Like Turtles does a lot of crossover, and I've enjoyed all of them for different reasons, whatever. But going into Turtles and Stranger Things, I was like, I don't want to say skeptical, but like I didn't know what to expect. Like, okay, it's another property, and I love Stranger Things, and I love Turtles, but who knows? Maybe it'll be good, whatever. And it is fantastic. It's such a good pairing of the characters. I didn't like it looks. Fero, your work is beautiful in it. Like it really blew me away how well these properties fit together in a way that I did not expect. So kudos to both of you. It's fantastic. So
thank you.
Thanks
Yeah.
so much.
When they kind of approached me about the story, my first reaction was the same. When I heard like Ninja Turtle Stranger Things, I was kind of befuddled for a moment, but then you kind of start thinking about it, and you've got the teenagers, you've got the 80s setting, the science experiments, and all that. There actually is a lot there, and so I kind of after that I got really excited to. My mind just started racing with ways to explore the characters and put these kind of worlds together. But even then, through the outlining process and all that, there's still that little part of your little voice in your head, like, is this going to actually work? Is this going to work? And I remember when Fero sent over the first character designs, which are basically just kind of, illustrations of the turtles and the, different, and the Strange Things cast in different pairings. And when you saw them next to each other and the way Fero illustrated them and the way he's, riffing on the 80s Eastman and Laird style, like it just so worked. And I immediately exhaled and I was like, oh, this is going to work. This is totally going to work. But yeah, I like that we kind of came in under the radar a little bit.
when it got to you, was it already decided that these are going to be the Eastman Laird Turtles, or did that come from you or either of you?
I think we both landed there separately, and Fero, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think like Fero was already kind of lined up when I was pitching and talking about the potential direction for the story. And I felt pretty strongly that it was a great opportunity to use the Eastman and Laird Turtles and to kind of embrace the 80s of both properties. But I'm pretty sure Fero, by the time I pitched that, I remember them coming back and saying, oh yeah, that's what Fero was doing. Like Fero wants to do that as well. So I think we both kind of on our own knew that was maybe the best approach.
Oh, interesting, because it's such a bold choice, because basically every other crossover, to my memory, is like modern Turtles, but maybe like either it's in canon with the IDW verse or it's not. But like it's usually recognized as a modern take on the Turtles with some alterations to fit like Power Rangers, whatever. But like for the fact that this is the 80s Turtles, it was I don't know, a bold and kind of perfect choice for it.
Yeah, I just felt like part of my initial thought actually was partly thinking of it more from the Stranger Things perspective at first, which is when, it's such the property is so, Stranger Things is so kind of built around the 80s. And I think the way in which they use 80s pop culture, there is a sort of commitment to it. They don't, yeah, there are the gags when they're actually like, featuring, whether it's the way they do D&D or just the storytelling and the way the kind of pacing and aesthetic riffs off Amblin, like they're pretty committed to honoring that sort of era of storytelling. So part of me was like, if this is going to be Stranger Things, we kind of have to, I can't imagine Dustin seeing the Turtles, like the modern Turtles, that kind of almost feels weirder than a regular, like than the crossover itself.
Yeah.
So I was like, it kind of had to be the 80s Turtles, but also I have such a fondness for those, Eastman Laird comics that if there was any way for me to get a chance to play around with that take, like I really wanted to kind of jump on that. Fero, were you fired up about drawing them in that style? Because that was different than, the other Turtles work you had done. I was new to the Turtles, but you've been around the block.
Yeah, well, my first approach when they give me the project, I thought that well, this is a live action. I thought, I well, maybe we have to do something with the live action movie of the 90s,
Oh,
almost
interesting.
80. That was my
Oh,
first, the first thing I have in my mind. But my editor told me that no, we want something more back more old. Um, then I thought I think like well, maybe the Jim Lawson for Return to New York, it could be, it would be cool because I like that style very much. But they told me no, more like Kevin Eastman, Peter Late style. Oh, and that's what. Oh, I know what you are wanted to do. Okay, that's fit perfect. Yeah, I understand what they wanted, and that's where I started um to thinking different about how to draw the Ninja Turtles, because I never draw the Kevin Eastman Peter Light style before, so it was like relearning how to draw the turtles, and I think I got better with the time when I start doing the drawing more this style with them.
That was a big question I had for you, Pharaoh, because you had already figured out, because you had already done some work in the turtle realm, and you'd already figured out what your turtles look like. Was it hard to kind of like unlearn that and then pick up what the Eastman and Laird turtles look like?
Um, yeah, a little bit. Um, with the expression of the faces of the turtles, that was hard for me because um, the Kevin Eastman appear late. I feel like, well, they always look like angry, like
Hmm.
with
Yeah.
this mouth. Yeah. So giving them different expressions, and I have to study all the Mirage and Kevin Eastman Peter Laird. So how they draw this different expression, how they look, how the turnaround of the head of the turtles is different. It's different in many ways, and I have to learn all that.
Was the expressions the toughest part? Because you're right, they don't like I've always like they don't smile
No,
well, right?
no. Well, they can smile with the yeah. There's a few panels when they where they smile or where they look like scared or surprised. So I
Sure.
have to look for all these little panels where with different expressions.
And they don't, their proportions are totally different. Like those feet are huge compared to what you'd normally draw.
Yeah, they're shorter because
Oh yeah,
the
yeah.
they told me that yeah they also doesn't have to look like very tall compared to the kids, like the same height to the kids of the Stranger Things. So that they are shorter with the big hands, big toes, and all that.
Were you guys I mean for both of you, so Pharaoh, I know you were a turtle fan growing up. Cameron, were you a turtle fan already?
yes. And it's funny. After this came out, like my mom dug up all these photos of me from like Halloween when I'm 3 years old. And so I realized like I don't remember a time when I wasn't a fan of the Turtles, because
Oh, cool.
my older brother was super into it. And so like by the time I was born, like Turtles were already in the house, we already had the lunchboxes and the helmets and all that. So yeah, I don't know a time when I wasn't a Turtles. And I actually was thinking about that because you know, someone asked like, "Oh, who's your favorite turtle?" Like Donatello is my answer. That's my favorite turtle. But at some point, I realized like I could wax poetic for a pretty long time about why I like Donatello, but also I don't really know because I picked that when I was three. Like it
Right.
might have just been the only one left. My brother might have forced me to be a Donatello. Like I don't remember. But yeah, it's been there's not been a point of my recollection where I wasn't a fan, which is I think maybe the only thing that I can say that about. Like Star Wars, I didn't get into until I was really like seven, and I think Turtles might be the longest running thing for me.
The similarly, were you guys were I mean were you guys both fans of Stranger Things? Pharaoh, you first. Had you already watched Stranger Things when you got the project?
Yeah, I watch all the seasons. but my favorite is the season 1, 2. Yeah, because it is more like the Goonies for me, that part.
You like the kids. I do too.
Yeah, with the kids.
I
Yeah.
like where the series is going. I think it's good, and I think they've reached some very real challenges. But
Yes.
like you want kids on their bikes. You like
Yeah.
that's what's appealing about that. So like I understand what you're saying. Yeah.
Yes.
What about you, Cameron? Were you a fan of it? Sorry.
Yeah. No, for sure. Was definitely a fan. And I still remember, like, I forget which con it was, but whatever that first year when um Strange Things came out, I just remember being at a convention, maybe San Diego, and it just being this thing that everyone was talking about because it hadn't quite blown up yet. So it was that, like, have you watched this Stranger Things show? Like, it was, and I think that was kind of, I don't know, maybe I'm misremembering, but um it was one of the first like Netflix shows that people were really kind of had this organic kind of growth to it. It had that sort of word of mouth buzz to it. And so yeah, I know I've been a fan, and was, again, just like, it's a different type of fandom, obviously, as compared to
Oh,
Turtles, just
totally.
because
Yeah.
it's newer, but yeah, equally as fun to play with those characters and get to kind of get in that sandbox.
Here's a question. Were you stranger? So you had basically you were like editorial decided that it should be um, early Eastman and Laird type turtles. Were you allowed to choose where the Stranger Things cast was? Like, because they changed drastically from season to season. Did you have any freedom as where to get them from? Does that make sense?
Yes, I probably took all of that way more seriously than I had to. Like, I
So I
I
care about
was
that. So
yeah,
what takes place? I love that.
I was very intense about figuring out, okay, where does this take place? So Stranger Things was a little easier just because after season 3, there's, like, the crew isn't all together at any point. Like, everyone's either, you know, people are missing or
Right.
thought to be
Yeah.
dead, or
Yeah.
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 And so season 2 is the last time when, like, everyone's really together, and I didn't want to kind of miss out on any particular characters. So that kind of made sense. And then for Turtles, I went I used it as an excuse to, like, go back and just reread all the Mirage and Eastman and Laird comics, and was trying to figure out where to place it. And I actually, and I used both those. Okay, like, the Turtles or the Strange Things cast is after season 2. Where are the Turtles during the Mirage era? What kind of is going on with those characters? And use that as kind of inspiration for their arcs and what they're kind of bumping up against. But I remember I think it's and I forget now, but I think it's after issue 7 of the Mirage era is where I kind of see this as falling. And I remember at one point I, like, emailed the editor and I was like, hey, I realized that we have this scene where they go down in the sewer, but technically at this point they've actually already moved to April's apartment. So, like, can we switch that to April's apartment? And they're like, no, dude, like, they gotta be in this. They gotta be in the sewer. You're overthinking this. I was like, okay, yeah, no, that makes sense. But yes, in theory, you can read the first 7 issues of Turtles, I think it's 7, and watch the first 2 seasons of Stranger Things, and then read this, which frankly I think is what Eastman and Laird and the Duffer Brothers intended as, like, the
Sure. Yeah.
perfect,
Clearly.
experience.
I love how specific that is. That's fantastic.
Yeah, it was fun though. I know I'm, like, preaching to the crowd with this particular audience, but if you've by any chance never read the Eastman and Laird run, like, you just got to do it. It's so fun. It's I had read some of it, but not all of it before doing this book, and they are so, there's nothing like them. Like, there's just, because they feel, in one of the in the collections that IW has, they have, like, little interviews or kind of back and forth between Eastman and Laird talking about the issues, and they talk about, like, passing the pages back and forth as they were working, and that you can, like, feel that when you're reading those comics. Like, they feel like zines that somebody put together, and the fact that it became this, like, global phenomenon when that was its origin, I just find so charming and wonderful. So yeah, I definitely came away, like, knocking on knocking on doors. Have you read the Mirage Turtles? Here's where you start.
I find it funny that they like they're in space in issue like 4 or 3.
Yes, that was my big
Like
takeaway
they
too. Like
just they go
it
right
gets,
for it.
yes, it goes so much weirder and more
Yes.
ambitious and out there so faster than I anticipated. I was like,
Yeah.
this is, and then they
Yeah.
have that Donatello issue where it's like their sort of love letter to Kirby,
Yep.
which is totally wild and wonderful. Yeah, it's there, and then I'm actually I agree with you, Fero. Like that Return to New York City arc, I think is maybe my favorite stretch of Turtle stuff. Period. Like I just, it's so good.
Yeah.
Fero, like, had you already been a fan of those early comics? Like, I'm somebody who discovered them. Like, I was into the cartoon. I grew up I was born '85, so I grew up with the cartoon, the movie, and then found the comics as like a teen. Fero, were you very familiar with the Eastman Laird Turtles when you started?
Where it started with Stranger Things.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, a little bit, not too much because as you, I grew up with the cartoon, with the movies,
Hmm.
and here in Mexico we only have the Archie Adventures comics of Ninja Turtles.
Right.
But it was different. Even that was different because like here the artist, well, there was another artist that remade all that comics with different things, and I didn't know anything about Kevin Eastman or Peter Laird until just for one interview in they did in that comic when they mentioned Kevin and the creators, and I saw for the first time a draw of by Kevin, and it was something completely different from what I knew about the Ninja Turtles with Raphael as all like really muscular and very squared, and with Casey Jones and holding like big weapons and why I say, what is that? This look awesome, and since that moment I start searching for that comics because this is for an adult. This is not for kids. This is something very extreme. But that was before the internet,
Sure.
so it was until many years later that I discovered the comics of Kevin Eastman and Peter Laird, and even at that point, it was difficult to reach all these original comics for me. When I started with working on IDW, they give me this is for your reference and everything. They give me all the link for all these comics of the original Mirage run. All the reference I wanted for from the Turtles. So it was for me. It was something really awesome to have
Sure.
access to all these materials.
So there was a toy tie-in. Was that like, I'm always curious about how these corporate synergy things work. Like, was there a toy line first and they said, "Hey, let's do a comic," or the other way around? Do you know how any of that worked?
Yeah,
And
the toys came out first before the comic.
okay, they did. Okay, I couldn't remember. I remember I didn't. I get a lot, but I didn't happen to pick
Yeah,
those
like
up.
one year before.
Got it.
So
Okay.
when they announced the comic, this maybe it's for the line toys that they 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 came out last year.
Got it. Okay, cool. I'm curious too about like were other, at least like what were the directives from editorial, like, okay, you can't use this, you need to use that. Like, was Shredder ever in the picture? Like, what was the directions you were given of what parameters to stay in?
Well, I think that was one of the things they were very open when I was pitching.
Okay.
And I think for me, again, like whether this is the right move or not, I really wanted to, figure out where in the Laird and Eastman run this kind of could take place. And then I wanted to stick, because I knew we were going to do the aesthetic of those comics. I wanted to make sure we were sticking to what was up to that point, what had happened in those comics. So I
Oh,
didn't want to.
Shredder's one dead. Sure.
So
Yeah.
yeah, Shredder's gone. I didn't want to pull from things that came from the show, which limited us a little bit. But in general, like they were totally open, and I was also kind of mentally preparing If you work with a licensor, there's obviously always going to be, feedback and notes and things like that. And I had not worked with two before, so I was kind of mentally preparing myself for lots of notes and lots of
Sure.
no's. Um, but both sides, both the Netflix team and the Turtles team, like they are all the feedback we got was really, both supportive but also helpful. And they, especially in like the beginning when we were kind of figuring out the voices and the dynamics, like they were really great on kind of helping us get those all lined up. But yeah, there was never really a point where like a big idea or like nothing was off the table, at least to kind of start, I don't think. Which is great. It was really nice. We got to really kind of tell the story we wanted to tell um, and do it the way, and had their support to do it, which was awesome.
I mean, I think it's cool though. Like sometimes coloring in that box, like sticking yourself to, okay, it's in this part in the continuity. Really, I don't know. I feel like it helps creativity. Like for example, like the reason what I was getting to was the pairing of Baxter and Dr. Brenner to me is one of the most inspired parts of the book. Like that relationship makes sense. They know each other. Like that
Was
really
genius,
worked.
yeah.
Right, like Fero, like that's really like that really worked in a way that Shredder and this wouldn't work. So like I was like, is there a point where you were like, oh man, these two together make a lot of sense?
Yeah, like I think that was the thing. Like I didn't try and find like where does this take place for Strange Things and Turtles out of like even though I had that gear of like the nitty gritty fandom of like I want to know how this all works. That really wasn't or how I kind of came to thinking about it that way. It was more of I needed to know what where the characters were in their stories, so I could figure out what is this story actually going to be about. Where's the kind of overlap? Where are the differences that we can kind of push people up against each other? And one of the things that got me like really excited from the beginning when they were first kind of telling me the idea was that realization of you know there's 11 being basically, kind of bored or made in this lab and Brenner's, the possibility there for overlay. That was kind of my initial, like, oh, they've both kind of seen things and are kind of the results of other people's experiments and things like that. That was kind of where I first saw that there was kind of depth to explore there. So yeah, that makes me happy that worked for you. Because yeah, that was one of the kind of the early things. Like, okay, this is a thread that we can really kind of run through and explore.
And it's the like Turtles like can do anything, and a lot of the time, and it has done everything, right? So there's space, there's magic, there's this, there's that, and like whereas Stranger Things is very firmly in the science fiction realm in that way. So like this is the one huge Baxter is the one huge area where it's like, okay, this is clearly the same. We're the Venn diagram there, like they fit together there, right?
Yeah, that
Yeah.
that felt like the best way to still be exploring like these big pillars of the different franchises, but keeping it in a realm that felt grounded and felt natural. And I think it was kind of like when we were in the first issue when I was writing and I was worried like, okay, well, we have to introduce both these teams to their other setups, and that's a potentially like 12-page
Sure.
backstory catch-up thing. But you kind of realize like I think these guys would roll with it. Like they've all seen stuff at this point, Like I think they'll kind of get it. And that's what's nice about sticking to Stockman and sticking like they're in this kind of points of reference with the other characters and what they've kind of seen to that point. So I think it made it easier to get everybody on board and moving forward with the story.
Where did the Demogorgon Mousers start? Was that a Pharaoh thing? Was that a you thing? And like, how did that? 'Cause I want to know about the design, but I want to know also who's like, oh, we can put these two little creatures together and it'll be something cool.
I mean,
Mm,
I
th-
nothing is cool in comics until they're drawn. So like I can't like I think Pharaoh deserves all the
Yeah,
props for that.
Pharaoh, like those
uh,
Demogorgon Mousers are super cool. Like, what went in? Like, what did you want to capture in both of them? Like, what went into that? Because it was such a cool combination.
well, I don't remember that it was my idea, but yeah, I think I don't know. It feels like so natural to mix those characters. It was really easy to me, like, oh, this with this and this and this, and make the mouth, and it was like w- it's very weird that happened this when you are designing, no? But the first sketch is the final sketch, no? And it was like the first sketch I did, and it was the idea finish it. Like it was very, very like natural to me, this combination of two characters.
What I like too is that you can clearly tell it's both. It's
Yeah.
not 70% of one and 30 of the other. You know it's a Mauser, you know it's the Demogorgon. Like it was such a great the chemistry of the two together is it's the perfect balance. It's so good.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I think.
Go ahead, please.
Yeah, no, I was just gonna say. I think when like Fero said, like, you're kind of going back to that Venn diagram. You're trying to figure out what are the ways we can kind of show people the things they expect to see from these worlds, but also in a new way or in a new light, or kind of literally in this case, mushing them together. Um, but yeah, it's one of those things where it's easy to say, oh yeah, okay, we'll do the Mousers and we'll do demo dogs, and like that's a natural fit. But you have no idea what that's going to actually look like on the page. I remember seeing the designs from Fero, and just like you said, it fits so natural, and they both are immediately recognizable as both pieces, which is, yeah, he just totally crushed that.
Story-wise, was there ever a temptation to go outside of, like, as the story, is the issues? Is there four pieces or five parts or four? I always forget. I'm sorry.
It's four.
Four. Was there ever a temptation of like, oh, we've got to bring in a bigger bad, or like in the Turtleverse, or did it make more sense to just stick with the Stranger Things monster? Like, was there ever any thought you would have other big bads in there? I guess.
I think when I was pitching, I did kind of like 4 or 5 takes, for them to kind of choose and see which, and I try to do like bits of both. Like, okay, well, in this version, the real big bad that we're building for is more on the turtle side, and this one it's more on the Stranger Things side. I think, yeah, I think I really tried to keep it where I wanted the big idea. I think we tried to keep it more tight. Like I think there was
Yeah.
the not pressure, but every time you write an issue, it's like there's so many characters from both of those worlds
Oh my gosh,
that
there's so many
that
characters.
we didn't get to, that like, oh man, we never got Steve and Casey
I
hanging
love
out. Like
Steve. Yeah, I love
there's a
Steve.
whole
Yeah,
series that could just be those two hanging out. But I tried to, where as best I could, like really make sure that if I was going to put something in, it served the story. It served, and I was almost kind of, that's kind of why I broke the characters up, was I wanted to. I feel like the best way for us to actually get into the characters a bit was to make sure that they had pairings so you could have real scenes where they're interacting. Because when you have it's a big cast, I mean, it's when you're putting
I
them
mean,
all
even the
together.
show
So
has. I mean, I think one of the complaints people have about Stranger Things, so, and I'm not like it's not a bad thing, but like there are so many characters, even just in that show, that the way they get their airtime is to split them up, and sometimes it feels like, oh well, like there's so like, are you getting enough airtime for this character or that character, whatever? So like, I mean, in that realm, like, what was I don't know? Do you have favorite moments, or I really wanted to pair up this kid and that turtle? Like, is there anything like that stood out to you?
yeah, I mean, you want to have a balance of, like, you want to have enough scenes where it's everybody, because those are fun and you can get kind of the banter, and you want to see everybody hanging out and together. But to get the kind of meatier character stuff and to get more of the arcs that we were kind of going for, you do have to give a little more space for everybody. I think the pairing, again, Donatello fan. So I was trying to figure out, who do I pair with Donatello?
Sure. Yeah.
And part of that was Dustin, because like those two brainiacs together, I just thought would be fun. But then another character I really love from Strange Things is Max, and
Max.
I think Max is like kind of actually the smartest of the Hawking kids. It's a very different kind of smart than
Oh yeah.
Dustin, but
Sure.
like
Yeah.
she is street smart, and
Street
I
smart.
like I like the idea of Donatello being the one who recognizes, like, oh, that kid's smart. Even if she doesn't realize or think of herself in that way, like if you pair her with Dustin and Donatello, she's probably like, what am I doing here?
Sure.
But I think, the idea that maybe she doesn't see that, but Donatello sees it, that was interesting to me. And then the one that surprised me was, I really came away like loving Will from Stranger Things. Like not that I didn't like him beforehand, but he kind of has an arc with Leo. And that was the one that didn't jump out to me right away. But as the story developed, I kind of figured out what the story is actually going to be about. There the two of them and kind of what they were going through and what Will was going in particular kind of became my favorite part of the series, which surprised me.
I always think it's interesting to me, like, the turtles. I think the reason why the property works so well is that like it's like there's four major archetype personalities, but like with and I noticed this like the Ghostbusters crossovers they did too. But with Stranger Things, similarly, like they're all maybe not Max, but they're all nerds, right? Like, so like I'm sure I'm wondering if like the temptation was like, oh well, a lot of these characters might gravitate towards Donnie because all of them are nerds to begin with. Like, so that's I don't know if that's was a challenge at all.
Yeah, no, and there was some that like at first I actually didn't want Dustin with Donnie because at first I was like, oh, those have to hang out. Then I was like, well, maybe I shouldn't because maybe that's too much nerddom in one part of the storyline. Maybe we need to logistically spread them out. Um, yeah, it's like finding when I literally kind of broke out like, okay, well, these characters are here, like pairing them up to kind of figure out what's the most interesting kind of dynamics. And it is a thing where you wanted to pair them with the people who are like them, but you also wanted to make sure you paired them in a way that challenged each other, kind of pushed and prodded at each other a little bit, because that's how you can kind of get some more character scenes. Um, so, I mean, luckily, I think that's part of why, again, like part of the benefit of putting Max in with Dustin and Donnie, that it just has a different flavor in there, which is good. And then Raph and 11, I think was really, and I love, and luckily, like 11 is like with Max and 11, you kind of have a little bit of different flavors, so you can kind of,
Yeah.
it gives you a better balance over the kind of all when you're pairing them up with all four of the turtles. Yeah.
The Pharaoh, I wanted to point this out. So like I said, I went to this book, not sure what I would, whatever. And then three like the page that I was hooked was this one here, this spread in
Yeah.
one. It's the for those who are, I mean, obviously it's just an audio podcast, but like it's like 4 or 5 pages in. It's this huge spread where the turtles are fighting the Mauser Demogorgons and with the kids in the background. But like amazing where like I don't know if there's anything that you can talk about that spread particularly, like what went into it, because that's such a like that is the image for me. It was so great.
Yeah, I don't know, I have to thank to Cameron to put all these spread pages in each issue because they making my art like I can do this kind of drawings that it's not easy that fit it in this story because it takes like too much space in the story and you have to for a writer. I work with many writers that don't like to add these spread pages, so I was really happy when I was working with Cameron that he is kindly to put in each issue this spread pages. And for the first issue I watch all these because Kevin and Peter and did this kind of drawings too, like a big two page spreads, no? So I was looking for the kind of poses and things and tried to recreate that in this first issue. Like the first time you are going to see the Ninja Turtles and you have to making him look like really, really great.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
that was, I mean, I did the spreads partly because I think I figured out pretty early on that Fero liked to do them. So I was like, yes, like I want to feed you what you want to draw. That sounds great. But also going back to just like trying to really honor Eastman and Laird's approach. Like they
Yes,
constantly did spreads. They
yes,
Yeah.
constantly did. They would do the first page as a full page splash, and then you turn the page and it's double page spread. I mean, so
see,
I tried to really kind of like even that spread. I don't know if it was a spread in the original Mirage, but the first appearance of the Mausers, we do kind of homage that with the sound effects and the kind of the placement of it. But yeah, I mean that's how they did their storytelling. So I really wanted to, and then plus once you start seeing what Fero does with these, I mean, every issue he just like one ups himself. Um, I mean, and by the end, like no spoilers, but some of the spreads in the back half of the book are just ridiculous. So it was fun. I was like, we were doing it. I was, approaching it that way for Eastman and Laird, but then like once you realize who you're working with and that Fero just has that in his back pocket, I was like, oh yeah, I gotta figure out even more ridiculous ways to up the ante here.
I love the use of like upside down and right side up stuff. Like that's so Stranger Things. That's such a great idea to do that. It was wonderful.
I was pumped about that. I did have to like draw out directions and how the page flip would work and how the reading is
You
kind
sent me sketches, right?
I,
Because
I
it was
did. I
very
never
difficult
It's hard to
to me.
explain, I'm sure.
Yes,
Yeah.
I tried to make sure never to send sketches to artists because I cannot draw. And in general, I'm like, I want to trust the artist, like they're going to do it better than me. But on this one, I was asking for something that I was like, if I can't figure this out myself, just the logistics of it, I can't ask Fero to do it. Like, I've got to be able to make this work in terms of how it flows across the page. But yeah, I'm really pumped that we were able to get something like that in there.
No, this one's amazing too. This spread.
Yeah, it's one of my favorites.
I think that's the best one.
That's
Yes.
okay. This is the mid one. This is in issue 3, I think.
Yeah.
Issue
Spoilers,
3
but
on
yeah.
the subway. Holy shit! Like there's so like I'm going like I said I read this recently and I'm like going through it again. And I was like, oh right, that one. That one's so great.
The cliffhanger to issue 2 through issue 3. I mean, through issue 3 in particular, like has some of the that like I feel like that's when we just kind of hit another like Fero hit another gear in terms because you have this great kind of closed issue 2 and then this incredible fight scene in issue 3 and then this great cliffhanger in issue 3. I mean, on the art front, it's just it's all lights out.
I wanted to point out too, and I mean they're all the covers are great, but like issue 1's cover is wonderful with the Stranger Thing kids at the top and the turtles upside down at the bottom. That one's great. And then I love the cover to issue 2. I think that's my favorite when you do the Secret of the Use cover, Fero. Like I'm
Yes.
curious where that came from. Was that your idea of like let's play on the Secret of the Use thing? Because I love that. It's great.
Yeah, it was like and I wanted to I my first encounter with the Ninja Turtles it was with the movie, so I have too much love for that movies, the one and the second movie. So the first one is like it was very used and plays homage to that movie with this the city and the turtles appearing from the sewer for the manhole. So well, the second movie, I never see too many homage to that poster of the second movie. No, I wanted to do that something with that.
It's great. And like to see all those characters and like to see all those characters in the same place and all that, that's like that one to me is just something like really special. I love that cover. Here's a question, and this is probably one for the colorist, who was Sophie Dodson. Is that I
Yeah.
hope I'm saying that right. But I mean, like, because the turtles are black and white, those comics, was the color palette just straight up Stranger Things? Because it looks very much like the Stranger Things, like the reds. Like, was that all straight from the show? I don't know if that's a question for here or not, but
Mm, I don't know. The only thing I know from the part of the colors is that at the beginning, I think Sophie wanted to give different color to the skins of the turtles to make him
Right.
look different one from each other. But the I think it was from well, I don't know, it was from my editors of with Nickelodeon that they told us that no, the same color for all the turtles.
yeah, for the Eastman and Laird turtles, they're all
Yes,
Which
you
made
same
it
green.
tell who's who.
which like I'm again like I was all for committing to as like much as tight as we could be or close as we could be to that run. But it does make it like when you're writing it, you really have to think, okay, I need to make sure that every other like we always have to know who's talking. So if there's and when you're going through the proofs, it's okay, if a turtle doesn't have their weapon in sight, you have to figure out how to get someone to call them their name or for them, like you just have to really be paying attention to who's making sure the reader can at all times know if that's Mikey or Roth saying that line, like you got to be able to distinguish it.
I mean,
But
that's the
I'm
challenge
yeah.
of reading those original books. Is a lot. I mean, frankly, sometimes you don't know who's talking.
Yeah.
Correct. Yeah. But I
Guys.
think one.
Oh, go ahead,
Oh,
please.
that was the last thing to colors. I think once we get into the upside down, I feel like that's where like you really start to see those Stranger Thing colors really like pop through.
Oh, sure.
Sophie did an awesome job throughout.
Yeah, like I said, the color palette's great because it feels like I said, because there was no way to inform the other side really. Like taking the Stranger Things palette and like really finding it on the page here is beautiful work. She did great.
So
Um, guys, this is wonderful. I just wanted to again promote this book because, like I said, I know this wasn't. I didn't read it when it came out, but I read it recently and I was like, man, I'm blown away by it. So it's so good. So for those looking for a cool Christmas gift, it's Stranger Things and Turtles collected book. It's fantastic. We have already talked about all of our favorite turtles. Fero is Donnie. I'm Donnie. You're Donnie. So instead of that,
I
Yay.
didn't know we were all dying.
I
Let's go.
usually end with asking everybody their favorite turtle, so I'm not going to do that this time. I'm just going to ask everybody's favorite Stranger Things character, and I'm going to say Steve. Even though he's not in the book, he didn't belong in the book. I love Steve. Steve's great, and I hated him in season one. Hated him, and then
I know.
Steve's my favorite character. So anyway,
Steve is probably mine too, so which
yeah,
is why it was so hard to not
he didn't
get him
belong in
in
the book.
there.
He really did. Yeah.
It just I was like, okay, well, as soon as the concept is they're going to New York for a field trip, like Steve can't be there, and I did have a stretch. I was like, okay, well, maybe he takes a Greyhound bus because I did like try really hard to work
Sure.
it in,
It
and
would have
I
been
had to
forced.
cut out that one. Yeah, but no, he's my favorite too.
Faro, do you have a favorite Stranger Things character?
I think for me, Dustin is my favorite. Yeah.
Dustin's pretty great.
Yeah, I remember. I mean, remember to me when I was a kid. So yes, Dustin.
Well, guys, thanks for doing this. I really appreciate it. This was just a pleasure, and I love this book. So thanks for doing this.
Thank you.
Thank you so
Thank you.
much. Oh my
Appreciate
gosh,
that.
thank you.
It was a surreal experience to me. The book, working on Stranger Things, and working with Ninja Turtles, and the fans love this crossover. It is something really something that I really appreciate.
Well, I mean, with good reason. It's just like I said, it was one of those things that you didn't expect, and it felt like, there are crossovers that feel like, oh well, it's just almost feel random. Like, oh, people like this, people like that, so they'll like them together, sure. And this was like really takes you by surprise in a really cool way. So I mean, kudos to
Yeah.
them for figuring this out and making it really work. So,
Thank you.
Thank you.
all right, guys, take care.
All right, see ya.
Bye.